Hey guys, welcome to the Ramsey Paul Show. It is Tuesday, November 4th, and thank you so much for being here. I do these shows every day, Monday through Friday, except Friday is just for my Substack viewers. I want to give them a shout out. Thank you. And I usually do different type of videos on Friday. So if you want to be involved in that and help support me, there's a link below in the description to join my Substack. And if you want to send a contribution in the mail, there's a link in the description too, a PO box, or you can send a power chat. And I got a $10 power chat the other day. I just noticed it from October 22nd. So thank you. It's anonymous. I don't know who it's from, but thank you very much. I do appreciate your support. All right. Well, I'll probably get some people mad here, but I don't care at this point. I've always tried to keep it real on my videos. And I'll start out with the video by saying I'm really happy that Trump won. I think Kamala Harris would have been a disaster. So I don't regret supporting Donald Trump. And sometimes in a democracy, you just have to do the best option, even though it's not perfect. I understand that. But in many ways, Trump has been very frustrating, especially when it comes to the economy and the state of the United States. It feels like to me, and I don't know about you guys, that things are starting to get in disarray within America. I don't know if you guys are feeling that. I don't see inflation going down. I don't know about the official numbers, but every time I go to the store or go out to eat, prices are through the roof. I don't think housing is affordable. I feel sorry for young people trying to start in the world. They can't afford a house. Where my generation or the generations prior, when they were young, if they got a job, to get a corporate job and you could afford a home, a starter home, but nice little home in the suburbs, have a couple of kids, but that's not really realistic anymore. And for a variety of reasons, it's difficult to get jobs, especially kids out of college. They're just hard to come by, these corporate jobs. And part of the reason is the H-1B visa. So it's ridiculous. H-1B visas were supposed to be if you can't fill the jobs with Americans. Because the story back in the day in the 90s, early 2000s, and it was always, I think, somewhat a lie, was, oh my God, we have a tech shortage. We don't have enough programmers that can do this job and as Americans. And until we get more Americans to go into STEM, we got to do something. So we have H-1B visas. So we'll get the top of the cream of the crop from India to come in here. And they're just here to supplement until we get our native population trained and they can do these jobs. Well, that was always a lie. And the H-1B visas, they're not being used for that. They're being used for taking jobs in America. And what's even worse, this allows a lot of Indian migration into America. And there's nothing wrong with Indians, but they belong in India. And we see a lot of communities now, even in Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville. It used to be a nice, kind of quiet little city. Now it's just populated with Indians. And that's not the culture I want to live around. And what happens is they get in, they get legal residence, and then they start just hiring their own people. So for an average like white guy, it's very difficult to get out of college, even if you have a computer degree. It's worthless now. You can't get a job. And so they were sold a pack of lies, young people. Go to college, study hard, get your job, and you can start your life. That because that's what the boomers said, because that's how they did it, because that model worked back in the day. And I agree, it did work. But things have changed now. And this is part of the problem, I think, with Trump is he doesn't understand that this country has changed. And it kind of reminds me like a lot of sports teams. A lot of people I know don't watch sports ball. I do a little bit. But for example, now you have the Kansas City Chiefs. They were the most powerful team, the best team for the last few years. But recently they've been declining because players have got older. That guy that's dating Taylor Swift, Kelsey, he used to be the best tight end in football, but he's getting old now. He's not as good. And they lost some key players, but they still hold on till they're a great team because they're remembering the glory days. And it's hard for them to understand, oh, those days are off. That happened with the New England Patriots. You had Belichick as a coach, Tom Brady, Gronk. They were a dominant team, but they started to lose their pieces and they became a horrible team. Now they're starting to turn it around now, but they had to reinvent themselves. And this is a process I think that happens with businesses and even happens with countries. Uh, Russia, the Soviet Union went through a similar thing. Russia was the largest part of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union fell apart in 89, 90. And in the 90s, Russia had a really hard time. This is because you hear the neocons always say tropes like, oh, Russia's nothing more than a gas station with nukes. They're a weak, primitive country. That was probably true in the 90s. It really was. They had a lot of problems. And then Putin took over around 2000. And over the last couple decades, they've really turned around. Russia is not a backwards country anymore. They are a very modern, powerful country. I remember Tucker Carlson, he was surprised because he went to Moscow and how clean everything was, how modern. And people go to China, they see the same thing. They seem more advanced than the United States, even. We we are living in old days. We're nostalgia. We're thinking of America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I get it. We were the number one dominant country in the world during that period. We were the richest. We were the leaders in everything. We got to the moon. Yes, we did get to the moon. All high tech. We were the top. We had the best military, everything, right? The best country in the world. And I agree we were, but that's past tense. We're like an aging football team that's looking back on the glory days. We're no longer that country. And we could do a whole dissection what happened. I think mostly it was due to immigration, but there's a lot of reasons why this country has fallen from where we were. But the point is we're no longer the country that we think of. And especially older people, that's hard to come to terms with because we think in our younger days how we were dominant. This was a great country, a lot of opportunity, freedom, the whole bit. And now that has radically changed. And we're seeing some issues here. And here we go here. Let me just show you what Trump is complaining about. And this is so tone deaf. And this is about the mayor of New York City. It looks like Zoran Mamdani is going to win the election of New York City. And he's a self-proclaimed socialist. He's not a capitalist. And I oppose his ideas. In fact, Mamdani, he would not win if it was just people that were born in the United States voted. He wouldn't have a chance to win. So this mass immigration is why he's going to be the next mayor of New York City. And make no mistake, he is a socialist. He's very anti-white, the whole 9 yards. But Trump, the way he attacks it, Trump calls New York City mayoral candidate Mamdani a Jew hater. President Donald Trump on Tuesday accused Democrat New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani of anti-Semitism, writing on Truth Social that any Jewish person that votes for Zoran Mamdani is a stupid person. And this is really, really tone deaf. And it's a very boomer position of a Republican that doesn't understand what's happening. First of all, the reason this guy is going to be mayor is primarily to a lot of Jewish forces. They have been a lot of Jewish groups, and it's not just Jews, but they've been the leaders in mass immigration into the United States, third world immigration. And just not the United States, they've been pushing that in Europe. The famous Barbara Specter quote, we Jews are going to take the lead in transforming Europe by pushing all these non-whites in. So Trump, he's so out of tune because first of all, most of these Jewish people in America, they do not support Trump. There's some that do, like Stephen Miller. So I'm not saying all, but the majority, they vote Democrat. They vote for policies that traditional Republicans or Christians oppose, the pro pornography, pro mass migration, the whole bit, all the racial stuff, racial identities. So the idea that Trump is trying to oppose this candidate from being mayor because it's anti-Semitic. And again, why this is tone deaf, Trump can't even take our side saying this is bad for white people, even though this guy Mamdani has been extremely anti-white. He's said that explicitly. But Trump, will say, no, this guy's anti-white or anti-Christian, is just anti-Semitic because we have to have a proxy. And I've talked about this before. People cannot advocate for white Christian interest. We always have to have a proxy that gives us permission to attack someone. So when Trump is attacking Mamdani, Zohran Mamdani, someone with that name should never be New York City mayor, but because of mass immigration, here we are. But so Trump is like, oh, well, I can't attack him because he's anti-white because, that could be racist. So I know I'll say that he's anti-Semitic, and that's okay. But how is Mamdani exactly anti-Semitic? Has he said he hates Jews or anything like that? No. All Mamdani said is he's not planning to go to Israel and kiss the wall like every Republican candidate and most Democrats have to do. Because why should you? You're a mayor of a city. You shouldn't have to pledge allegiance to a foreign country. And he said, I'm not going to do that. And so, based on the logic of Ben Shapiro and all these types, unless you put Israel first and kiss the wall, that means you're an anti-Semite, Nazi, the whole bit. They use that whole refrain all the time. They use it on Tucker Carlson. They even used it on Ron Paul. Ben Shapiro did years ago. This is how they think. So they're using that on Mamdani, and that's not really resonating with people. And we've seen this other places. I've heard other kind of mainstream conservatives. Oh, don't you know that Mamdani? He's from Uganda, and they're not friends of homosexuals. And oh, how terrible! So again, it's trying to oppose something not because of our interest, but because it's bad for the Jews or it's bad for homosexuals or something like that. It's trying to own the left by playing their own game. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. And it's such a boomer take to do what Trump is doing, and it's really frustrating. But the problem that Trump has is, and I talked about it yesterday, is Trump no longer has a vision for this country. He did originally, but he abandoned it, just like he did in 2016 once he got in office. And you could argue in 2016 he was attacked because of the Russian Gate hoax. I get it. But he's doing the same thing again. He started out okay. We're going to get out of the Ukraine war. That's none of our business. Let's improve relations with Russia and let's move forward. Let's put America first. We can't fight all these wars for Israel and, against Iran and all these other countries. But he's totally abandoned that. He didn't get out of the war. We're still entrenched with Zelensky, that little lying bitch. Zelensky's totally broke with reality. Ukraine is losing bad, and Zelensky has these imaginary battles. He thinks he's winning. I don't know if he really believes that or he's just lying. If he really believes it, that's probably even worse. But it's kind of like Hitler in 1945, just imaginary troops. And for some reason, Trump tied himself to that. He had so many opportunities to break away from that, right? And just say, no, we're not being involved. We're not supplying weapons. We're not going to give intelligence to Ukraine or Russia. We're neutral. We're not part of this. This is an America first. He could have done the same with Israel, saying, we're not going to give you weapons to do your little genocide in Palestine and raping the women or whatever you do there. We're not doing that. You have to fund that on your own. And we're not going to attack Iran for you like we did. And now Venezuela, he's trying to start a war with Venezuela because, I don't know, they supposedly sell drugs to the United States. Well, that's a law enforcement operation, and it shouldn't be a military thing. It's not something that people are going to look at favorably when we're bankrupt. So Trump, his whole And now Nigeria is talking about. So his whole vision has become neocon. He's gone away from it. And even the economy, he started out with tariffs. You remember on Liberation Day, April 2nd, all these tariffs. And I wasn't against that. I think tariffs can be a good thing. And I think we should use tariffs to try to get industry back to the United States because all these free trade agreements were disastrous for the United States because it shipped out all our industry, it impoverished cities. Yeah, it made things cheaper at Walmart, but it just wiped out a lot of our blue collar workers and it created poverty. And also, it put us at risk because a lot of these key elements that we need for the defense of the United States, we have to depend on countries like China. And that's the case. Like the rare earth refinements. Now, rare earths aren't really that rare. We have them here in the United States. But to refine rare earths, that is a process that's complicated and you just can't spin up overnight. And because of these free traders, we outsource that to China. Now, we can't do that, just like we can't really build ships anymore. China's way better than we are at that. I don't know what we do in the United States anymore. I guess we do OnlyFans, we do porn, and we have casinos everywhere, and we sell drugs. That's where United States is. That's not a good place to be. But anyway, Trump decided, okay, I'm going to do these tariffs. I'm not against that. But these tariffs, then, he started using not as an economic policy, let's bring jobs back to the United States, but as a weaponization, mixing tariffs with sanctions, confusing the two. For example, he's told India and China, if you buy Russian oil and gas, we're going to hit these huge tariffs on you. What's number one, the Trump that was running for office was basically, we got to get out of this war with Russia. We should be neutral. And it should be none of our business, right? So we don't have to consider that. But instead, because Trump, sadly, at this point is very weak, he tends to agree with whoever he talks to last. And that is true. I mean, if you think about it, he's flip-flopped and everything. Met with Putin in Alaska, who's best friends with Putin. Oh, we don't need a ceasefire. Let's improve relations. Let's have a train between Russia and Alaska. And they had all the stuff, really good stuff, right? And then Zelensky and the Europeans, they talk to him, kiss his ass, and then he just abandoned that. He goes, oh, no, 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 we actually do need a ceasefire. And you know what? I'm going to give Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine now so they can fire our missiles into Russia. That'd be like Russia putting missiles in Mexico and firing them into the United States. It's just crazy, right? So Putin then called Trump directly, and then Trump flip-flopped again. And he's like, oh, okay, that's not a good idea. I'm not going to do that. But the point is, Trump just seems to agree with whoever he talks to last. He doesn't really have a position or a plan that he's working towards. There doesn't seem a plan at all. And that comes with the tariffs. So he was using these tariffs to tell India and China they can't buy Russian oil, which you can't do to a sovereign nation. They can buy from whoever they want. But because he wanted to appease Zelensky, that little loser bastard in Ukraine who persecutes Christians as a dictator, Trump decided to throw all the goodwill away on the right to try to appease him. And then because of that, we got to get in a fight with India and China with these huge sanctions if they don't, if they continue to buy Russian oil. And China basically got tired and said, oh, yeah, why don't you go fuck yourself, Trump? We have these rare earths that you count on to build missiles and jet fighters. So go fuck yourself. We're not going to sell them to you anymore then. And that created a panic. So Trump went and met with President Xi in South Korea, total capitulated. All those tariffs pretty much he backed off on because they know China has us by the balls. And because no one in the administration thought out their policy of, wait a minute, if we put these huge sanctions on China because we don't want to buy Russian oil, because we want to appease that little bitch of a dictator in Ukraine, maybe would China react to us about rare earths? But no one seemed to think of that, right? It came as a total surprise because these idiots don't plan ahead. And they are idiots in the administration if they didn't plan this ahead. So Trump had to capitulate on all that. And even then, China is still Trump saying, oh, we have these great deals with China. And China's like, nah, not really. You better watch yourself. Really humiliating. But that's where we are now. So now these tariffs are, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what the tariffs are. People in business don't know anymore. He keeps changing it. There's no real strategy on it. So that was one of his domestic policies. But anything else, what's his policies? Because what really affects people in America right now, I would say, are personal things. This is usually the way it is for normal people. They care about, can I afford to own a place, own a home, or rent a apartment, right? Can I afford food? Are there good jobs available? Not working fast food, but something that actually will provide a career path. So you're a young man. Okay, if I work hard, do well in college, can I get a corporate job? I can afford, start a home, get a wife, start a family, get good health insurance, the whole bit, right? That's what they care about. And Trump seems to be AWOL on this. There's just no talking about this. Instead, he's worrying about Jews in New York City and how dare you vote for Mamdani, and worrying about Venezuela and all these stupid bullshit in Ukraine, which leads to these on again and off again tariffs on India and China. He's not focusing on America first stuff at all, and is starting to show. And so we have this government shutdown that is creating a lot of problems, and it's going to create more and more problems. And I know the Republicans, they can blame the Democrats, but here's the situation. The Republicans control the presidency, they control the Senate, and they control the House. That's Republicans control it all. Now, I get it because of the Senate. In order to pass something because of the filibuster, I think they need 60 votes, not just a basic majority. But the Republicans, they have the power to end the filibuster. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. It's a procedural thing that the Republicans can change because they control the Senate. And I know the Republicans are saying, "Oh, we can't get rid of the filibuster because if the Democrats get involved, take over again the presidency, we need to have that power." Yeah, but if the Democrats take the Senate, they'll just get rid of the filibuster. But the Republicans are principles. We don't want to get rid of that. So the Republicans are holding it up. They are holding it up. The Republicans today, literally today, could vote and then get JD Vance in there and vote. We're changing the filibuster rules. This isn't a constitutional thing. This is just a procedural thing. No, you can't keep debating forever. We just have a simple majority vote, and they would have the majority to vote for the spending bill. So the Republicans own it, and most of the Americans are going to think that this is a Republican problem. And what are the Republicans digging their heels in? One is the Obamacare, uh, the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, which gives subsidies to people that, for example, don't work for a major corporation. If you don't work for a major corporation, insurance is unaffordable unless you get subsidies, unless you're really rich. So it's very important to a lot of people. But but Trump and a lot of Republicans say, "Oh, but it's too expensive. The Obamacare thing was horrible. We got to get rid of those subsidies. We're running out of money. We got to get rid of the subsidies." And Trump, for years, from the beginning of his first term back in 2016, "Oh, I got something better. We're going to replace Obamacare with something better, a much better plan." And everyone's like, "Okay, well, let us know what it is." But he's never has, never has. So the Republicans now, they want to cut the subsidies, which are really going to hurt a lot of people. So they will not be able to afford healthcare insurance, which means they won't be able to get care they need. Or if they do get care, they'll end up bankrupt. Seriously, this is where we are now. Uh, and the Republicans own that, and they don't have a plan to make things better at all. And the problem with housing and is horrible. And part of the issue is we're getting all these people in, like I said, in Bentonville, Arkansas, all these Indians coming in on H-1Bs, and normal kids out of college can't get jobs. They just can't get jobs because the H-1Bs are taking them. And the Republicans won't do shit about it. Won't do shit about it. And so, what the hell? What are you doing? What's your vision, Trump? What's your vision, Republicans, for the future? Now, I don't support Mamdani in New York City, but he has a vision. Now, his vision is horrible. It's not going to work as socialist communist, but he has a vision because he's talking to a lot of people in New York City. Hey, your rents are too expensive. Food is too expensive. Everything is too expensive. I'm going to work to try to make things better for you. Now, what he's going to do is not going to help. It's going to make things worse. We know that from history, but it's still a plan. It's a horrible plan, but it's a plan. Whereas Trump and his whole administration, I don't see any plan. I really don't. I don't see any direction. Unless I miss it, what's his healthcare plan? What's he going to do to improve healthcare costs? And as Marjorie Taylor Greene, she kind of weighed in on this. Let me get to her and take a look at what she had to say on this.
Bill Maher, and I think you've been extremely eloquent in this shutdown in talking about the issue of Obamacare subsidies. I'm a Republican too. We don't agree on everything, but we both agree we have to extend these subsidies at least for a year because you just can't pull the rug out from under people who are going to see their premiums skyrocket.
Yeah, you can't. And that's the thing is if Trump has this magical healthcare solution, well, he hasn't submitted it. So until he submits it, people are going to need these subsidies.
You talked about your own family, how you'd be impacted, but I imagine many of the 700,000 constituents you represent. So what are you hearing from your constituents on this issue, and how do you see this shutdown ending?
My phone in my office, my district office in Washington, is ringing off the hook every single day. People are beyond outraged and they're terrified, but this has been going on for a long time. Democrats voted for the ACA in 2010. It went into effect in 2014. That was the year that we saw our health insurance policy for a family of 5 go from $800 a month to $2,400 a month. And I'll say this, we also watch health insurance companies drop out of the market, and healthcare costs have risen and risen and risen and risen. But I'm going to pick on Republicans. Republicans never fixed it. And then the ACA tax credits were passed in 2021, and there was a sunset date of the end of this year. And Republicans never made a plan for that. And I have been I yelled at Mike Johnson last week on our GOP conference call. By the way, I'm missing the call today. It's going on right now. And I hope that Mike Johnson is finally giving a single health care policy because the country deserves it, and it shouldn't be a secret. And I shouldn't have to go into a skiff to go find our Republican health insurance plan.
Maybe
Honestly,
there is no plan.
You know what? You want to know something? That, I believe, is the truth. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of bills, but there's no consensus.
Yeah.
And I think that's a failure.
Yeah, as what she said, there's probably no plan. And that's become evident. There's just no plan. And I get it because, again, America's in decline. I'm not trying to think of the good old days. And there's a lot of reasons for it, mostly because of immigration, but whatever. I'm not going to get into that here. America, we're not the country we used to be. We're not as rich. We're not as prosperous. I wouldn't even say we're as forward thinking in technology. I think China and Russia's ahead of us. They can build infrastructure quickly. We can't build shit anymore. The country, again, is just about prostitution, OnlyFans, drugs, and gambling. It's really sad, and scams. It's not going to end well. And I get we need reform in the country. And this isn't all Donald Trump's fault because this developed over years. But what Donald Trump needs to do, and the Republicans or whoever comes after Trump, they have to give a vision. They have to be straight with the American people. And if we just don't have the money anymore for healthcare subsidies, that may be a difficult conversation to have with the American people, but be honest about it and say, we won't be able to subsidize your healthcare anymore because we're bankrupt. But if you do that, they better also carry that on everywhere so all budgets feel the pain. For example, people really don't give a shit about the Donbass or Ukraine or Israel. Most people really don't. Those are luxury items. When everything's good, yeah, whatever. But we can't be spending money on these foreign wars and supporting Israel and Ukraine and everyone else when people are struggling in America. If we're going to cut for the American people, we need to first cut on all these silly foreign endeavors. And we also need to cut the defense quite a bit. and I've mentioned this over and over, we spend more in our military than all the nations in the world combined. That's outrageous. We can't afford that luxury anymore. Because I'm not saying we need to be weak, but we need a much smaller military. And we got to bring a lot of them home. They should be defending the United States, not all over the world and everyone else's business. We can't maintain this empire anymore. The United States was never meant to be an empire. We need a restructure. And I think we can. It's like a football team that was really good and they become bad, but then they could turn it around, right? The New England Patriots looks like they have. It's a similar thing. But we have to go through that process of rebuilding, and we got to do that now. Russia went through that process. They went down in the 90s, but they rebuilt. We need to do that in America. Have a vision, and we need a leader that has a vision for America. What we're going to do to make jobs more affordable. I have ideas. I would, number one, eliminate H-1Bs immediately. It's like our kids can't get jobs. No way, right? So we do that. Eliminate that. And then we got to talk about healthcare. I know healthcare is very complicated because it's just not the insurance companies. Healthcare costs are way too high. Why is that? Why do we have so much administration? There needs to be deep cuts in healthcare to make it more efficient. The government needs to look at this, the administration, to develop a long-term plan. Until we get there, they need these subsidies, though. It's got to be a progression, how we get to the end state there. So there's a lot of these things that Trump and the administration and the Republicans need to address. And I don't see them addressing that. I don't see them having any plan whatsoever. They just react to things, say silly things, and they're all over the map, especially Trump. One day he's putting tariffs on, next day he's taking them off. Who knows? And things seem to be spiraling out of control. And just as administration said today, that if this lockdown continues, government shutdown, pretty soon we may not have air travel. And that's going to create an issue. And the markets are crashing. There's a big issue. And they can say, oh, it's the Democrats' fault. Well, but then the Democrats are going to say, well, you Republicans control the Senate, House, and the presidency. And the Republicans can say, well, yeah, but that's because of the filibuster. We need 60 votes. And the Democrats are filibustering it. And the Democrats can say, yeah, well, you could change the rules. You control the Senate. In fact, that's what Donald Trump says. Donald Trump told the Senate to change the rules so they can vote on this. But they're going to get blamed. The Republicans are going to get blamed for this, not the Democrats. And they can, kvetch and cry about Mamdani, and I don't like him. He shouldn't be in this country. He should be deported. But I can see why he's gathering a lot of votes, just because, again, he has a plan that is addressing needs of the New York City, his constituents. And again, I don't support what he does, but he's focusing on them instead of Israel. Whereas we have all these Republicans like Ben Shapiro, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz. They don't give a fuck about Americans. They just care about the Israeli masters. And people are like, wait a minute. You're saying I got to take all these cuts, but we got to keep money flowing to them because supposedly the Bible says that? Well, what the fuck are you talking about? And this is where we are now. And it's crazy because all these people that push us, like Ben Shapiro and Ted Cruz, they all hated Trump. And so Trump always panders to people that hate him, and he throws people that support him under the bus. I have no idea why, but he does. And that's what he's doing now. So Trump really needs to, or people that listen around Trump need to listen to their base and really change things around quickly. They need to stop this stupid war in Ukraine, get out of it. It's none of our business. Stop this Venezuelan nonsense. Stop funding Israel. Fuck that. Oh, by the way, do you think if Israel funding was threatened by the shutdown, the Republicans wouldn't change the filibuster? Oh my God, they'd be changing it like that. If it, had to do with Israel, oh my God, we got to make sure they get their money. But America's getting their healthcare subsidies. Yeah, fuck it. No, we're principled. We're not going to do it. Yeah, that's not going to fly anymore. Anyway, guys, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.